welcome to another edition of ACB Front Porch Conversations. Glad that you tuned in today, and we are going to be talking, Miss Wallace and I, Evelyn Wallace, who usually goes by Evie, is that?
That's right.
And she lives in Carter House, and I'm thrilled that she's here with me today. May I call you Evie?
Sure.
Would you tell our members a little bit about you? Where were you born and where did you grow up?
Well, I was born in Pennsylvania, a small area in a bigger town. The town was Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, but I was born in a little place called University Avenue, and it was all one family that lived in the town. They were all my mother's family, her brothers, and her mother and father, my grandparents. It was a large hill, and they called it the Hafner Hill. And I spent quite a bit of time there until I was about 4 or 5 years old. And then I moved about 10 miles away, but it was all part of the same area. I love Pennsylvania, but it'll always be my home, but I love Florida too.
Well, those are two good combinations to have in your opportunities to live, I think. Pennsylvania is a beautiful state. I'd like to see more of it.
Yes, it is.
And a lot of history.
I just came back from a month in Pennsylvania. I spent my vacation up there this year to celebrate my birthday.
Would you mind sharing with people which birthday that is?
Well, I'm 102 years young.
And you definitely are 102 years young. I admire you so much.
Thank you.
When you were there this past month or this summer, what did you get to do while you were?
Well, the big thing was I had a large birthday party. I have a son up there. I have 2 boys, and one's in Orlando and the other one's in Pennsylvania. So the big part of my vacation was to spend my birthday as a big party, and my family had invited people that I worked with a long time ago. One of my friends who was 94, well, one was 97, I think, and the other one was in her 90s too. So I haven't seen them for a long time and had the opportunity to sit down, and we discussed, and we took the medical profession from the beginning and to the end, and we revised the whole thing.
We should submit your report to Congress. Maybe they could.
I'd like to. I don't know whether it would help or not, but we thought it would.
And good for you ladies. Tell our viewers a little bit about your early life. After you moved?
Well, I had 2 brothers, and I lived on a farm, my grandfather's farm. When I say my grandfather's farm, I mean we lived on his land, and my grandfather was getting too old and ornery to carry on. So my father farmed the land, and once a week, every Saturday, he would go to an open market, and there he sold vegetables. My grandfather later on then too went into the flower business, so we had gladiolas was the big thing. And I remember when I was a Girl Scout that I wanted to go to camp in the worst way. And my mother told me, well, I see no reason why you can't go to camp if you can earn the money to go. And the cost was $7 a week. And so Evelyn picked strawberries on the farm for 3 cents a box. And believe you me, I picked strawberries until I saw strawberries morning, noon, and night. But I made it to, I think, about $5, and my mother and father chipped in the rest so that I had a week at Girl Scout camp, which was a big thing in those days.
I'm sure it was.
And I went to a large high school, and somehow or other I graduated when I was 17. I was 16, just going on 17. And I wanted to go in training, but the hospital that I chose, which was Lankenau Hospital in Philadelphia, and is still in existence.
With the same name?
Yes, a doctor by the name, I remember a Dr. Deaver, and we were told, he went to Germany. This was in 1930 or something like that, 31 or 32. He went to Germany and he brought back 7 sisters. We call them sisters. They wore a garb, but they wore blue denim and white caps. And they opened a hospital called Lankenau Hospital in Philadelphia. And we still had the sisters when I went there. And it was a little bit stricter than what it is now. I remember we had to get up early in the morning, and we had to be at breakfast by 6:30, and then there were no excuses unless you were ill. And the head of the hospital, the head of nursing, was always at the breakfast table, and you better be there. And things were a lot different at that time, but I did some things wrong when I was in training, but I did a lot of things right. And I remember, if I can go on with
Sure.
my hospital stories, I remember a sister called Sister Florence. And all I remember is she was a big person, and she had big feet. That's what, because when she came down the hall, you could hear her with her feet kind of, clopped on the floor. And she also had a big voice. And when I heard Miss Gross, which was my name, being called, boy, I moved. But I learned so much from her that I carried through the years. I learned discipline. I learned to be kind to other people, even when they were not as kind to you. I learned so many things from her that really were not medical things, but she also was a wonderful nurse, and she came to Lankenau after being a nurse on horseback in West Virginia, so that she was an ideal model for all of us. But she was very strict. I mean, you did things her way, and you better do them that way, because it was more than being reprimanded. There were other things that she could do to you that you didn't appreciate. And I remember a lot of things that I did, but there was a room that all surgical patients were put into. And when you were senior nurse on that particular floor, you were in charge of the post-operative patients for 24 hours after operation. And I remember this just like it happened yesterday. We had a little girl, and she was malnourished. Her body was that of about a 6-year-old. And she was in this post-surgery room. And we put diapers on her because she was not responsive in all areas. So at that time, we didn't have the kind of diapers that you have these days, Huggies and whatnot for smaller children. We used cloths and just put a diaper on her. And of course, we had to use a safety pin. And I can remember being in a hurry, changing her diaper, and when I took the safety pin out of the diaper, which was soiled, I forgot to tell you she was on an air mattress. We did have air mattresses at that time, and she was on an air mattress. And there were only about 3 or 4 air mattresses, I think, in the whole hospital for different people to use. And being in a hurry, I just took the pin out and stuck it in the top of the bed, which I thought was a bed, and which was a quick way of doing it. But I stuck it in the air mattress. And I thought Sister Florence was going to have a heart attack. But I didn't forget that for a long time.
I bet you didn't.
And that's why I remember one of the stories that happened to. And I have quite a few that I can remember. Some make me laugh, some make me a little sad.
Had you always wanted to be a nurse?
Yes, yes. I can remember when I was in 3rd or 4th grade, I used to think, in my mind, I would think, boy, I'm going to take care of other people. I'm going to take care of other people. And during my career, I did nursing, I think, for about 43, almost 44 years. And in that time, I did hospital nursing, I did psychiatric, I did surgical, medical. At times I went out into homes, and sometimes that was a good deal, and sometimes it was not a good deal. Sometimes you met families that were not very cooperative, and not only were you taking care of the patient, but you were taking care of the whole family. And I did most every kind of nursing there is. Pediatric nursing. Pediatric nursing was one of my loves, and that was before I was married and before I had children of my own. But I'm very interested in, they call it the Smiley Train. I don't know how many people are familiar with it, but it's a group of doctors and nurses that go to really poor countries and do hair lips and cleft palates. Hair lip, of course, is if your lip is split, and a cleft palate is when you have a hole in the roof of your mouth. And I became very interested in that kind of nursing. It was patience, 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 because those children cannot swallow. Sometimes if you put it in their mouth, it comes out of their nose, or it comes back out of their mouth. So the babies that I had, I usually asked to go into the nursery because that was the kind of nursing I liked to do. Feeding babies with an eyedropper just took time and time and time. And I also hope that if anybody has any money that they don't need, send it to Smiley Train, because those people are doing a wonderful job with those babies and children.
It is something I've heard of, and I understand that they do just remarkable things for people who wouldn't have any other option to have it done.
Surgeons take a month off and work for free, and nurses do too. I think it's a great organization and needs all the help it can get. It seems there are a lot more children with that defect in poorer countries. I don't think they've ever really discovered what causes it, but babies are born with it.
Well, I hope they'll find the reason and help make it better.
I
But
hope they do.
it's wonderful that there are doctors and nurses that are giving of their time and talents
Yes,
to do that.
yes.
Tell me about meeting your husband.
Well, that was an interesting story. I worked in Philadelphia for a while after I graduated, doing private duty, and private duty was not one of my favorites, but I'll tell you why I did it, because it was paying the most money at that time. And my father became very ill with cancer, and he died here in Pennsylvania, so that I came home to take care of him. My roommate and I both came to Pennsylvania. She lived with me here, and one of us was with him in the daytime, and one of us was with him at the nighttime. And when he died, the bottom kind of fell out of things for me, because I had to find a new kind of job up here, and my mother was young and was of course down in the dumps, and was very, very upset by, I had two brothers. So that I was kind of in a float. I didn't know where I wanted to go for a job. I didn't know what kind of nursing I wanted to do. All I knew was that I better get a job and not fool around too long. So that I had a friend here, and I saw quite a bit of her. She was married and had a small child and lived about 25 miles from where I live. And she said, "Ellie, I have a young man that I think you would like." She said, "He's really nice, but he's a little on the shy side." So she invited him, and she invited me one evening, and we went to play cards at her apartment, she and her husband. And my husband, John, I call him Jack, we seemed to get along all right. So he asked me for a date, and I thought, well, what have I got to lose? I had no boyfriends at that time, so I said, sure. And he said, well, I'll tell you, there was a zinc mine about 10 miles from where I live, and this is a bottomless mine. They at that time were taking zinc out of it. Zinc, a zinc ointment, and zinc this and zinc that. But it also was a dangerous, there were signs up all over, no swimming allowed, no. But everybody was swimming there, and they dove off of high rocks and what. We did all the things that were very dangerous. I didn't particularly, but most of the people, most of the young people went there swimming because you could swim free, and the water was just right. So he said, let's go swimming. And I said, okay. So he came for me, and in a car. It was a little convertible, so they call them roadsters at that time. And I thought, gee, he's got a car. So, anyway, we went swimming. But we weren't smart enough to put our bathing suits on at home. And on the way swimming, I thought, how is this going to work? So he said to me, why don't you get out here and put your suit on? There was some seclusion there, no buildings of any kind. And he said, I'll just drive around the rocks over there and I'll put mine on there. Well, that's what we did. He came back, and we had a real nice afternoon. But on the way home, it started raining. And all of a sudden, I felt my feet getting very damp on where I had them. And I was trying to move them around because I thought, gee, this car leaks. So I was too embarrassed to tell him that my feet were getting wet. But when I got out of the car, I did have wet feet. I did have wet feet. So we laughed about that a lot because he said, yeah, that car. I never did tell him that my feet were wet until after I got to know him much better. But that's how we met, and we had 2 great boys. And I often laugh because we took such deliberation naming our children that we call them John and William, and it was Jack and Bill. We often laugh about that. We said, I wonder what made us do that. And Jack said, well, we were too busy. We couldn't think and go out and read books and define names and whatnot. So it was John and Bill.
Where did you get married?
We got married in Pennsylvania, in the Lutheran church. I was baptized, confirmed, and married in the Lutheran church. And when I was living in Philadelphia, I went to churches. Wherever anybody came and said, I'm going to the Catholic church this morning, a whole group of us go to Catholic church. If somebody came and said, we're going to the synagogue, we'd go to the synagogue. But I was a Lutheran up until my husband was a Presbyterian, but he became a Lutheran. And then when we came down here, we couldn't find a Lutheran church anywhere. So finally, somebody told us about one, and it was in Gainesville. Well, we drove to Gainesville 2 Sundays and decided that we didn't care what it was. We weren't going to go to if it had to be a Lutheran church or if it had to be another church. We weren't going to drive to Gainesville. And then it was not in a Lutheran church. It was in, I forget what kind of a church it was, but it was in the basement in the morning before the regular church. So we joined the Presbyterian church in Live Oak. And we enjoyed that church a lot. I still keep in touch with the minister that we had there. And then, of course, when I came out here, I wouldn't miss the opportunity of taking an extra nap on a Sunday morning and just walking across the street.
You couldn't be more convenient, could you?
No, it certainly couldn't. So I try to enjoy every church, and the Lord serves all of us, so it makes no difference what church you go to.
Where? When did you move to Florida, and where initially?
Oh, I retired in 1983, and we heard about Live Oak, and Jack had a friend that lived down here, and he came down here first, and then I came and stayed with my son. I retired much later than what he did, and I came down and stayed with my son in Orlando a couple weeks, and then we both came up here, and we kind of liked it up here. So and actually I lived only about 15 miles from here. We had a lovely home all by ourselves. It was a mobile home, but we added to it, and we had a garden. My husband loved the garden, and he had a garden, and we just had the best retirement ever.
And then, how long have you been at Evan Christian Village?
9 years.
9 years.
I started my 9th year in February. I lived by myself after my husband died for 2 years. But that got to be very, very difficult. Every time something went wrong, I had to get the telephone book out and find somebody to fix it, and I had to find somebody to mow the grass and find somebody to do this and that, and I decided, well, I think I'll try the village and see.
And you don't have to do those things now, do you?
I
Or even arrange for them?
I certainly don't. Everything is done for me. They take wonderful care of you, of everyone here. Or I wouldn't get to be, well, I wouldn't have got to be 102 years old if I wouldn't be here. I know it.
Tell me, what advice would you give a young person today?
Slow down. You know, and even talking. People talk so fast on the telephone. I often have to slow. My one son worked for Hershey. He just retired about a year ago. And he's used to getting orders. Now, I had many talking during the last month, but he talks so fast. You know, he moves fast, and I know that when you are on your job, you often have to move fast. But people on the telephone talk so fast, and I do wear hearing aids, so that sort of makes it difficult for me to begin with. But with somebody talking fast, and another thing he does is he talks to me and then he walks away and he's talking. You know, he's still talking to me because he's on his way to do something. And when people turn their back and keep on talking, I don't think too many older people can understand what they're saying. It must be face to face, and that way we know what you're talking about.
Well, I'm glad we've had a chance for this face-to-face discussion today and talk. Thank you so much for visiting with me, and to our viewers watching, again, Evie Wallace.
Thank you.